Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Loftin. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Codility, and we have a fantastic webinar focused on navigating the future of hiring. We've got a great set of panelists that I'll introduce shortly, but before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items. So during the course of the webinar, we'd like to keep the conversation really free-flowing. So if you have any questions throughout the duration of the discussion, please enter them in the chat queue that you see below. We'll try to answer as many as we can. And so fantastic. We'll go ahead and just jump into the discussion here. So I'd love to welcome our panelists today. Thank you all for being here. I'd love to go ahead and have you guys each introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background about yourself and the organization that you represent, and looking forward to having this discussion with you. I'll go ahead and start with Yulia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yulia, and I'm from Amazing Hiring. I'm a director of sales and customer success. And if you guys don't know what Amazing Hiring is, we are a one-stop shop platform for technical talent acquisition. We actually aggregate all the information about technical candidates, so the technical recruiters and especially technical sources have a great platform where they can find candidates faster. So I've been working in the company for 3.5 years currently. I started as a business development manager, and my role actually was to develop our European market. So that's how I joined. Last year, I became a director of sales and customer success, and we've been growing quite rapidly for the last 5 years. So this year, of course, for everyone probably has been a challenge, but I think we are surviving it pretty much. So thanks everyone for joining, and thank you, Scott, for inviting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yulia. Tony, would love to move over to you.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Tony. I work for SmartRecruiters. Our organization, to start there, we're set out on a mission to connect people to jobs at scale. And we do this by offering a complete talent acquisition suite. And our goal is to literally help our customers and set them up for success. And we define that as hiring success. So how do you achieve hiring success for your organization? And that immediately leads into what I do. I head up the hiring success branch of SmartRecruiters in EMEA. And I work with TA teams around the world to help them grow and mature their TA function. So this is what I do. And thanks for having me as well, Scott. And a little personal, I'm living in Berlin, moved here with my wife 8 months ago to work for SmartRecruiters, and always been in recruitment. Now on the supplier side, before this as in different TA leader roles in e-commerce and fashion, and before that on agency side. So working in all types of recruitment.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. Happy to have you on board here for the discussion. And then finally, Kimberly, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm definitely excited to be here. So my name is Kimberly. I am the Senior Manager of Talent and Human Resources at Samba TV. So I guess a little bit about us. We are headquartered here in San Francisco. So it's nice and sunny and early in the morning over here. Sorry, Yulia and Tony. No, it's a little late for you guys. Yeah, our bread and butter is really data and analytics, and specifically focused on real-time TV data. So, this has been a really interesting time for our company right now. We've got a lot of people tuning in. Viewership is higher than it really maybe ever has been before, and we're getting a pretty interesting peek behind the curtain and understanding how people interact with television, particularly right now in the modern day. So pretty exciting stuff happening on our end. I have been at Samba TV for about 2 years. I've been people team veteran for really my whole career. I tried my hand at sales, but I won't lie, it wasn't for me. So I moved on to the other side of things, and I was super excited to be able to build out some incredible teams, and love seeing all of the success of the people that I bring onto our organization. So, and I get to support them from both sides, the candidate experience and the employee one. So definitely hitting the sweet spot.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And again, thank you guys for joining us today. So I'm really excited to drive this discussion. And gosh, I'm thinking through the last 4 or 5 months, feels like it's been maybe 4 or 5 years with all the the different things that we've kind of gone through and the pandemic, and looking back, I feel personally myself, I've grown a lot, both personally and professionally. I think that's probably, for most people, would say that too. But in particular for organizations that are hiring right now, I think looking back in those first maybe couple of weeks, in mid to late March, even early April, about I think every emotion across the spectrum of going, how are we going to handle this as an organization? What is it going to mean for our people? How are we going to kind of get through this together? And I think for the most part, a lot of people just really kind of figured it out. They relied on technology more. They relied on digitalizing things more. They relied on communication factors and empathy and transparency. I'd love to start out with kind of just a general, maybe just a general topic and discussion. What has that journey really looked like for maybe your role, and how you guys have kind of gone through this journey yourself, and would love to maybe just hear from you generally, like what the last 4 or 5 months have looked like, and maybe some lessons learned, challenges, and opportunities. And so maybe I'll start with Tony on this one.
Yeah, good. Very good question. It has been quite a journey, I can tell you. To start off with the personal part, for me, it was a little bit like being forced in working from home. Always working with recruitment teams, heading up teams, always together on the office. And to be honest, not a big fan of working from home. And for me, that completely turned around. Honestly, I kind of struggled in March and April to find my rhythm and how do I still add value and that kind of stuff. But for me, I think from May, I reinvented myself in that perspective. I feel way more balanced, way better with my energy. And to be honest, I turned around. So I don't think I'll be going back to the office. So for me, it's fine that we as an organization really went to a remote first approach. So as an organization, to go into that a little bit, we had our internal organization to look after, right? What does it mean for our people and working remote from home? Thank God we were already 50% working remote, but we really switched to, I think it was a few weeks ago, remote first, all the jobs. The only condition is that you somewhat work in the same time zone. So in EMEA for an EMEA job and in the States for a States job. But we are going remote first completely. And also for our customers, it has never been busier for me because the pressure is off in terms of volume. So we finally have that breathing room to do all those projects and start improving and reviewing our tech stack and all that kind of stuff. And this is exactly what I do with the BA team. So never been more busy.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tony. I'd love to move to Kimberly. What has maybe some of the learnings been? What have the challenges, the opportunities been for you, Kimberly?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, the entire thing has definitely been a learning opportunity. I would say, looking at the talent side of things, Tony had it exactly right. We are getting a little bit of breathing room. We're focused on a couple of key roles, and now we have a chance to deep dive on some of the projects that we keep pushing off that really needed to be done. So whether that's template audits or process audits, we're getting a chance to really reevaluate what those look like and making sure that they're actually the processes we want to have in place for the long term, that are really going to just help our culture grow, help our teams grow. So that's been an exciting piece. I definitely think that when we moved to being fully remote, that was probably one of the most difficult times in my career. One, you've got all of these policies changing, these people mandates coming down. We're an international team, so not only am I trying to keep track of that for the US teams and state by state where we have offices, but internationally too, in trying to keep everybody from feeling like they're losing their heads too much. That internal side of it, we go from seeing each other 40 hours a week, Mondays through Fridays, and sometimes longer when happy hour spills over into the local, pubs nearby. But yeah, I think that would be one of the biggest things we're probably missing right now, has definitely been those kind of water cooler conversations where you get a chance to just see your people, connect over your day-to-day lives. And I think we've definitely had to get pretty creative with that piece of it. yeah, there's a whole host of challenges that we face jumping from seeing each other every day to being fully remote. And I think our team, I'm so proud of them and so impressed because this is not easy. I don't think it's been easy for anybody. So they made my job a lot easier by just hanging in there with me and knowing that we're all working through this for the first time together. So that's where we've been right now.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think just to echo that, I think there's a lot of crossover here. I think that we've all kind of experienced that, right? I think initially, I think for me, it was like I had never worked for a fully remote company before. And so part of me was like really excited. I was like, wow, this is kind of cool and it'll be fun and interesting. And I think about month 2, I was going, I kind of miss people. I miss, like you said, the interaction. Seeing people on Zoom is cool and all, but it just doesn't replicate the same as having that face-to-face. In particular, I think for managers, right? And so one of the things that I've talked to in past webinars is that collaboration component and the ability to manage, cross-functionally and internationally, even to your point, Kimberly, sometimes can be really challenging. So yeah, absolutely. I definitely echo that too. Yulia, we'd love to hear from you. What have the last couple months been for you? Challenges, opportunities?
Sure. Yeah. So I would agree with the guys that was quite a challenging period in my career as well. I was in a little bit different situation because being a head of sales, me and my team, we kind of drive the business, and all of our other teams, R&D and all the admin teams and marketing, they all depend on our efforts. So we were not in the position to kind of sit and edit templates, right? Because the world was kind of changing so rapidly, but we still needed to be same strong, same ambitious, and try to hit our goals, even though a lot of companies, as you know, guys, have frozen the hiring process or the budgets. And of course, it became like really challenging to meet the targets. So that was quite a challenge psychologically. So we usually try to, we started to do stand-ups every morning over Zoom, obviously, and try to cheer up everyone and try to make sure that everyone feels strong and empowered by this feeling. Because for the sales team, usually it's also very cool to be around each other because it's usually a very energetic bunch of people and we share the energy. So when you're at home and you don't see other people talking over the phone or doing some online meetings, you really miss it. You are kind of on your own, and that was tough. So that was one of the big challenges. I think it was more like the psychological pressure that I personally feel, and of course my team members felt, because as we are a startup which is growing, we understood that a lot depends on us. But from the learning point of view, that was really cool. That's for sure, because now I can say that we have become such a strong team, stronger than ever, because we still managed to be very flexible in our processes, in our approaches to business development, how we actually find new customers and everything. So that was fun. And also, what we did at some point of time, we understood that, well, the volumes are not really the same as we are used to. So we have a little bit of free time. So what we decided to do, and actually that was one of the common advice that you could read in all those white papers that you can, read managers what to do during the COVID times. So we created an online course for recruiters, a free online course, and we invited some of the thought leaders, and we delivered the course for all of the recruiters that were also, sitting at home. Some of them have lost their jobs, and we had 5,000 attendees during this course, and I think that was a great investment of some of our free resources and time. And from the point of view of the moral, that was also very good, because the team felt such a big, again, this energy boost, because that was something that we did for the community. So that was one of the, I think, one of the good things that we did, but still it was quite challenging, and still is.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think kind of keeping that culture, right? And so like whether it's, to Kimberly's point, like having that face-to-face discussion and just getting to know someone in person over a water cooler talk, or, like you said, it's particular roles in an organization that just are maybe have more of affinity for, more of an outgoing nature, like in sales or customer success. How do you kind of keep that culture together through these times? And so I think that's something that a lot of organizations are really trying to improve on, innovate on, and iterate on too. So thank you for sharing that. So let's go ahead and maybe switch gears a little bit. So I want to maybe focus a little bit more specifically on recruitment now. And so obviously there's been a lot of changes around, how we recruit, right? From, we used to have people come in and do in-person interviews, and in particular, like for engineers that would do some whiteboarding sessions. That's different. We're relying heavily on technology. There's different process changes. So in kind of keeping the theme of the future of hiring, in the learnings that you guys, I don't know if you guys have hired, I'm assuming you have in the last couple of months. I'd love to hear like what in that process has like, what did that process kind of look like? What have you, what have you changed in that process or learned from that process? And what will you kind of be taking away from that and using that in the future? And so I would love to maybe hear about what that looks like in terms of, how you look for talent now, how you talk to talent, and what that natural kind of process looks like in kind of the new virtual setting. And so maybe I'll start with Kimberly on this one.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely have hired this year, and it has, up until March, we had our face-to-face processes and things were going pretty smooth, and it took us a little bit of time to adjust. We really had to reevaluate processes across the board, right? And I think that our technical teams actually did a really, really wonderful job with this. And I think part of the reason is because over the years, we've really honed in on our ability to be able to hire remote because we are an international team. So as far as the transition for the technical teams, they did a great job being able to recognize like, okay, here's the couple of areas we need, some adjustments, and making sure that we're making those adjustments as we kind of continue through the process. And I think one of the other things that we have done is make sure we've got the right tools in place. And I'll throw a little plug in here for Codility right now, but we're obviously using Codility. The whiteboarding feature has been pretty game changing for us. And I think that has been a lot of fun for our team to use. I literally remember when we were demoing it and had one of my engineers drawing a giraffe. And he's like, this is great. This is perfect. This is exactly what we need. And I'm like, now I know exactly how my technical interviews go when I'm not sitting in them. So we're just drawing giraffes all over the place. But yeah, I think for us, it hasn't been on the technical side as much of a difficult transition to be fully remote. I think where we still miss it, of course, is that interaction with cross collaboration teams and having those face-to-face moments. We've definitely had to really put a lot of design thinking into the questions that we have, who's asking which questions, and making sure that all of these things are getting answered, but also, inviting this interview process that we have to still continue to be a two-way interview process. Ultimately, we want candidates to choose us as much as we're choosing them. And I think that making sure that we capture accurately the cultures of our teams, the cultures of the teams you'd work cross-functionally with across the board, that was probably one of the more difficult transitions, is just, identifying that we are accurately asking these right questions and getting the information that we need to make successful hires. But yeah, definitely appreciate good tools to be able to use for these, for all of these interviews.
Yeah, appreciate the plug there too. So yeah. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kimberly. How about you, Tony? Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit about kind of the how recruitment has looked like and kind of what you know now? What will you be taking away and kind of maybe honing in on in the future?
Yeah, I think I think it's nothing radically changed. I think we just accelerated in a lot of ways on the path that we were on in terms of how do you hire. I can remember from my previous job, hiring managers were, yeah, of course, I'll do a video interview and somebody can take an assessment at home and we talk about it through video, but then you come to that point to actually make a hiring decision. And then the hiring managers, yeah, but I never saw Julia face to face. I never shook her hand. So, and I need to do that before I can take a hiring decision. And we, in talent acquisition and recruitment, we know immediately why. You don't need that, right? It's not the driver that decides all things that make Kimberly the perfect candidate for this role, right? Like you notice that this was a discussion already going on a few years ago. We started slowly to move in that direction, and the more comfortable hiring managers and businesses with video interviews, digital assessments, and online tools. But I think we now came into a how do you say that? It speeded up a lot that you now have to take a remote hiring decision, and how do you actually do that? And it immediately falls into the question, okay, well, based on what do we actually take a decision? And I don't think it has changed that much from before Corona, after Corona, but now you are doing this remote and you don't have this, at least I looked her in the eyes and shook her hand opinion on top of it. You're really questioning, do I know enough about Scott to actually say, I'll put my hand in the fire for this guy, we're gonna go for it. And what drives that? So and this is why I think this Corona situation in this perspective is a great opportunity to finally have these discussions and speed this process up, which we as recruiters have been pushing already for a few years already, right? So when did we start with video interviews and that kind of stuff? It's at least 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, it's speeding up, and I love that. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Fantastic. Yulia, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, as kind of a hiring manager and in your role. What are some of the learnings, the takeaways, and what are you looking? What are you kind of utilizing moving forward in the future?
Yeah, I think what's important to mention here is one trend that I've witnessed for many customers as well. When we became fully remote, we started to hire fewer junior specialists because it's hard. It's really hard to onboard junior specialists. Plus, during the challenging times, you want to hire more seniors so that they bring on board experience, skills, and whatnot. So I can see that, and that was that we had to do as well. We used to hire a lot of interns, onboard them, grow sales managers and customer success professionals from them. But I had to readjust my strategy, and me myself, I'm now concentrating only on hiring senior specialists to the team. And that poses a question, and I myself, I don't know the answer to that. When we are fully remote, where do junior specialists actually grow? Because I know for sure that some of the graduate programs have been, postponed or frozen for many customers as well. So that's one trend. And this is something to think about because, of course, when you're fully remote, people with experience get onboarded much faster, and they have the skills to be more efficient at work. They can concentrate on right things, etc., etc. So this is what companies have to do, even if they do not really want to kind of only concentrate on experienced people. But that is something interesting. So it might be that this trend will emerge in something more interesting for junior professionals as well. And the second thing that's important here, we know that a lot of people have lost their jobs during the pandemic. However, the demand for, especially in IT, for highly skilled professional is still very high. Even though the market is kind of growing, we think there are a lot of candidates, but it's still same hard to find those top people. So again, the tools and the right assessment methods, the tests, for example, that you guys provide, or the opportunity to pre-assess a candidate, like we help in Amazing Hiring, where you can see the ratings from professional communities. That became even more important because you have to be efficient, and you have still to find the best people for the job. It hasn't become easier, unfortunately.
No. I actually think it has become more difficult because, again, you still need that top talent, and the volumes will go up, right? I saw in a BBC article, I think it was a few weeks ago, that there were 1,000 applicants on a job for a receptionist. How do you know you're screening the right 50 of those 1,000? How do you know that you hired the best person of those 50? Right? Our job will become more difficult in that perspective. Usually we have a lot of jobs and not enough people, and now we have a lot of people and not enough jobs, right? So it just changes around. It's not like, okay, now the economy is going down and we don't have anything to do. It maybe even makes it more difficult to pick out those right candidates. So yeah.
Yeah, true. So all the instruments that can help recruiters, I think their importance only grows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, for me, I think, the recruiter's job has always been really vital, right? And I think even more so now, just in kind of the situation that we're in, virtually, and with the dynamic in the marketplace too, the challenges economically, the challenges with the pandemic, and all of these, kind of outside forces. I think that, it's really, my hats go off to folks that have to recruit. And of course, I'm a hiring manager myself, and actually just made a hire recently. But it's tough, right? It really is. And I think to your point, Tony, yeah, like there's this imbalance now, right, around, more people flooding the marketplace for a number of different reasons. They've been laid off or what have you. And I also find it interesting on almost on the other side too, there's challenges, right? So maybe you have what you think is an A player that you want to bring on board, but maybe they're a little bit more reluctant to join a new organization because there is uncertainty right now economically, and maybe they want that security, and so maybe it's a little harder for them to actually make that jump. And so what do you do to kind of calm those nerves a little bit and prove that your organization is the right one to move to? So I think there's just a lot of complexities out there, but really great answers there. I'd love to maybe Kimberly actually talked a little bit about this earlier and kind of shadowed it, but I'd like to lean into it a little bit heavier. Technology, right? So we're all choose your flavor, Zoom, go to meeting. I think there's some, at least for me, there's some fatigue that's kind of building up around some of these technologies as a blessing, as much of a blessing they've been. I can imagine trying to do this 10 or 15 years ago. It'd make it even more interesting. But I'd love to understand from you guys, like, with everything kind of like we've kind of accelerated, like I think to Tony's point, you mentioned acceleration. Everything's been accelerated because of this, good, bad, and different, right? Especially on the virtual and digitalization of everything, right? And so I'd love to learn from you guys, have technologies, harmed or hindered? I know they've helped, obviously, but kind of like where you sit now compared to 6 months ago, compared to maybe 6 months from now, what are your impressions around the technologies that you're using? And, what are some of the I think the strengths and the weaknesses to that? And so would love to understand, how technology has kind of played that role, and even maybe naming some of your favorite technologies that you work with too. And so maybe we'll go ahead and start with Yulia on this one.
Yeah, sure. I have one negative example, which is pretty interesting, and maybe you guys have some comments on that. Especially, I think it's relevant for the IT and software development sphere. So a lot of companies that have moved to remote mode have implemented some time tracking and effectiveness tracking mechanisms. So usually these are some of it's just a software that's installed on a computer, and you can see various metrics on the productivity and effectiveness of a person. So it basically tracks everything that you do. And this obviously imposes quite a big ethical question, and especially for IT specialists, they, like the majority of them, really hate some of the technology that would, you know, track your time and track what you do. However, for the business owners and for the managers, this gives a little bit more transparency and control of what the employees are doing. And I've heard a lot of stories where such programs have been implemented, and it was met with a big resistance from the team. And this is quite risky, especially now, again, when the times are so challenging and everyone is like, you know, sometimes feeling a bit under the weather. So that's one interesting example. Control and transparency for the leadership on the one hand versus ethical side of the implementation of such instruments. So I don't know if you guys have any experience or you've heard that some of your customers have implemented something like this, but this is from the negative point, like negative side of technology. Otherwise, I think for IT companies, usually they have been, before the pandemic, they had been quite good with all of the different technology helping to coordinate work, for asynchronic communication, which again for international team is now one of the most important mode of working. So I think all the rest, in all the rest of the cases, technology plays only a positive part. But maybe you guys have any other ideas on that?
You know, those are some really good examples. One of the things that I thought of, we had a customer, gosh, I think it was back in April, one of the first webinars that we hosted, and we kind of asked, how are you using technology to think of creative or innovative ways to promote your culture, right? And so throughout the interview process and getting a candidate really comfortable virtually, you know, especially I think 4 or 5 months ago was somewhat difficult, right? So couldn't come to the office, couldn't experience and see the snack room and where, you know, the water cooler was and all those things that you typically do. So this particular organization actually had a really cool idea, and they worked with their marketing organization. They were able to do kind of a collage of like different small videos and you know, photos of the office, and really was able to present that to their candidates just to kind of show them, you know, hey, like, we obviously can't go in the office right now, but we still want you to see like what our organization represents, where you would be working, right? And so giving that kind of giving them that ability to kind of envision that, even though it was still like remote and virtual, really went a long way with some of the candidates, just kind of being able to see the culture, express it a little bit more transparently. And so that was a really cool idea. So that's one example that I had heard. Maybe Tony, I'd love to hear from you, like different ways that you utilize technology, what it kind of means to you throughout the recruitment process, and any innovative ways that you and your team are working with.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about your question, and I feel that I just want to zoom out even a little bit more, because for me it's not about the actual technologies that you use, but look at the world right now. In the last 6 months, we all experienced a radical change in what we do on a daily basis and how we find people and recruitment and everything. So our needs change. So for me, it's more around flexibility and my ability to change the tools in my toolbox that I need, right? So we might need now, if the volumes go up, I maybe need AI to help me sort out and pick out those best resumes top funnel. And maybe in another way, I needed to have more tools in active sourcing, because these profiles were really scarce to find. So for me, it's more how flexible are you? Because usually the tech stack within an organization as a TA team is not super flexible. You can pilot some new things, but you have longer contracts, etc. So for me is then, again, I work of course at the TA suite, but it's what is the tech that is at the core of your process, and how does this support these changing needs, right? So for me, it's more about, do you set yourself up for a best in breed approach? is the way that I would go definitely in this way. So how can I set myself up that I can innovate fast and try new technologies in these changing times as well? And how can I actually implement them in the current processes that I have, so that I'm not like band-aids, have different types of technologies, and for a new assessment, I need to log into a new other system, upload the candidate data so he or she can receive the email or the assessment. No, it needs to be in suite on the candidate profile, immediately way to go. So for me, it's more about your flexibility and ability to adapt as to breathe into your process. So it's a little other angle on your question, but this is what pops to mind when you ask this.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. Yeah, it's just I think a lot of folks are just kind of figuring out what that balance looks like, how they approach it across the board. So I appreciate that. And then Kimberly, would love to also hear from you. I know obviously you mentioned you use Codility in the process. What are some of the other technologies that you're leaning into, and how are they helping?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I won't lie, I'm putting the test of time on my technology right now. My cell phone, my watches, my laptop, they're constantly in use. Like I'm constantly, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but yeah, every once in a while my computer sounds like it's gonna fly off into another universe because it's tired of working with me. So I definitely lean on it very heavily. And I think that I like Tony's answer about this idea around being flexible. We're a growing company. We still very much consider ourselves a startup in a lot of ways. And even beyond that, we are a startup with gigantic tech giants in our backyard. We're sitting here in San Francisco, and we've got to compete with them, even though they're a little bit bigger than us. And I think that we have to take that into account a lot of the time. And so this idea of flexibility, this idea of being nimble, is something that we consider when we evaluate all of our tools. Where are we able to automate? If we're able to automate, how do we know this is the right choice to make, right? And what can we do to take all of this administrative burden off of the hiring managers, off of my team, my talent and my HR team, so that they have a chance to do what they do best, which is make connections with great people. So I think for us, when we think about the technology, that's top of mind for me. How is this going to help us be more nimble? How is this going to keep us agile and keep the process efficient without sacrificing this candidate and employee experience? So it's been definitely really interesting, and I like that you bring up the point also, Scott, about how we're trying to figure out how we can showcase our culture, which is super strong internally, but up until this point is not something that we have really built out for public-facing viewing, if you would. So we think we are looking at a lot of different ways to do that. We've done a lot of cool stuff internally. I don't know if you guys have heard of this tool called Donut, but I had a virtual coffee with one of my teammates who I almost never get a chance to speak with. And this was another one of those water cooler conversations where, we'd run into each other anytime he'd visit the office. And, it was really nice to be able to catch up with that person. I hadn't been able to since the last time I'd seen him, which was in the office probably at the end of last year. So it's a long time. So we use different tools like that. We also partner with our workplace experience team to come up with some very cool internal culture ideas. I think one of my favorites was this event that we held earlier in the year. It was actually for Earth Day. So for Earth Day, we had actually originally planned to, do some volunteer work, or we were working on getting that planned. And obviously, we're on quarantine during Earth Day, which I believe is April sometime. And so this year what we did was ask everybody on our big Samba TV Slack channel to post a picture of how they were enjoying the Earth today. And that was really fun for us, or maybe just really fun for me. But it was nice to see because, again, international teams, we get to see different views and perspectives of the world that, you don't actually get to see when you do go to the office. So I think that one of the positives here has definitely been that we are seeing a side of our employees we don't usually have access to, and seeing a side of our colleagues and our coworkers that we don't usually get to see. And that includes cats running across the screen, during different meetings. So yeah, I guess to get back to technology, anything that helps us be nimble is the way that we think about it. And internally, we're trying a lot of things out. We haven't figured out the exact right combo of the tools, and hopefully we keep getting there. But as quarantine kind of goes on longer, I think it's gotten a little bit more difficult. At first, you're like, let's keep everything going. Let's have all of these, impromptu lunches and happy hours, and it's harder and harder to find time for that. I think that work-life balance does suffer a little bit working from home right now, and we do want to be very mindful of that. So we do what we can, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, sounds like you're doing a great job. Yeah, and I want to emphasize that. Yeah, thank you guys all for that. I think yeah, the culture thing is a lot of people were trying to figure it out prior to the pandemic, before we all kind of were forced to be virtual for an indefinite amount of time. But I think I've heard a lot of some similar things coming from our customers, coming from folks I've talked to in the industry. And I really like the creativity around it. I love the photo sharing, and because those are types of things that typically that you would trying to recreate and reestablish some of that normalcy that you would do collectively as an organization, as a team even. And so I really love that idea. Some of the other things I've heard, a lot of the remote coffees and the happy hours, I think are fantastic too. And so I think, and that share, like you said, I think sharing that with candidates is something that I think goes a really long way in saying, listen, we're not just focused 24/7 in our computers all the time. We're still trying to make sure that we emphasize culture and work-life balance, and try to adhere to that, even though we're online, right? So I think that's really great. Fantastic. I want to take a moment. So we've got about 7 minutes or so here before I'll formally ask for questions from the audience, but I do want to make a reminder here, or actually we do have a question, it looks like. Fantastic. I was just going to ask the audience for some questions. So it says, using unique or specialized tools is one way of vivid, using unique or specialized tools is one way of vivid techniques, but what would be your recommendation or approach of hiring without using any tool? Interesting.
So the last part of the question is the question, right? So, but with a recommendation or approach of hiring without the use of any tools, correct?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And I need to go back and as a recruiter in my previous job. I would my first question would be, what is the definition without tools? Because even if you don't use an ATS, you probably use Excel or email to communicate. How do you receive your applications? How do you book in interviews? So there are always tools involved, but I think the reference of this question would be, you have your ATS and maybe no budget for all different awesome tools to use. I would take that one to answer this one. For me, the purpose will never be to use tools to use the tool. It is, I have a problem and I would like to solve it in one way, or automate it, or in a process, or maybe use a tool. But the tool itself would not be a goal for me. And if budget is an issue, there are so many free tools available as well. Sometimes they're a little bit more hidden away, but before we had self-scheduling in SmartRecruiters, we used Calendly, just the basic free version to have people book in interviews. I remember a few other free tools that we used as well, and even for video interviewing, I think we use Google Hangouts, also just free. So sometimes budget can be a problem, but maybe asking around in the recruitment community or Google, there are so many maybe light versions that could prove your business case, why it is good to use Google Hangout or Calendly, etc. And based on the success, it is easier to build your business case for buying or purchasing an actual tool. So hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to add on that if that's okay. one of the things that has always stuck with me, I guess, from when I started my career in recruiting, I was actually my CEO at my first recruiting job where I was at a boutique agency, and he told me this great story about how back in his day, he had to literally open up a phone book and go down the list of names and would actively call people through the phone book to make a relationship, right? To see who is available, who's interested in a job, and that's how he did his job. So I think one really important thing to remember right now is that tools are great, but they're not always a necessity. They're definitely one of those things where you want to really empower your hiring teams to feel confident to use these maybe old school styles of recruiting, if you would, because the reality is my internet crashes all the time. My tools, they sometimes break, and it's maybe because I made one small adjustment on the back end that had a huge cascading effect that I had no idea about. So I think that it's a really good question to ask when you're thinking about how you can build out a hiring process without tools. And I think that that's something that I'm actually really happy, because it's even challenging myself. Like, how would I think about my team operating in this world without all of the tools that we have? I think my team's super lucky that we are able to invest in the areas that we need to be able to do that. But the great thing about recruiting is that you don't need tools to build your pipeline. You just need people. And there's a lot of those, and you can open a phone book and be able to go back to the old school ways, and they're still tried and true, and you're still going to find phenomenal connections. So I think I kind of challenge everybody, even myself now at this point, to really think about your processes, strip it down without the technology, and see what you've got. Is it still a good process? And then build from there and invest from there. So I love that question.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Yulia? Any thoughts there too that you'd like to contribute? Or
yeah, I think guys have answered the question quite fully. Just in my opinion, even very sophisticated, innovative tools out there, they can never substitute the person who is actually operating the tool. So I think we still need to treat any instrument, any tool as just a means of helping us to automate and cut time on any manual routine. So, and maybe also it's important currently, because when we are on remote, I think our results are shining much more, because we get judged by our results much more, because we don't see each other so much. The communication is sometimes lost, but the results, they are there. And so anything that can help you to get the best results and cut some time on routine and improve your results, I think that's just and there are a lot of free tools as well. For recruiters, abundance of great tools. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, what a great question. I really think that kind of makes you think outside the box a little bit too, right? And so I think what it fundamentally comes down to is that, you can strip away, you can have all the bells and whistles, all the tools, but, I think in customer facing roles or recruiting roles, it comes down to just people, right? At the end of the day, and how you connect with those people and make those relationships and those connections. And, as simple as that sounds, that really is kind of what it is all about. So great question there. And so I'm seeing another question come in. Looks like this is around culture. So what are some practical examples of how you showcase your company's culture? Great. So I think we might have talked a little bit about those, but maybe we can expound a little bit more. Tony, I'll move to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of my favorite topics, and I think to start off with, what are a few practical examples? I think it's really important to realize that you are always communicating your company culture in everything you do already. The type of style that your career site has, your company website has, the marketing expressions your organization does. If you're a B2C brand, let's name we can all take one big brand like Tesla or Apple. You have a type of an idea. Doesn't mean you have been on their career site, really looked at their EVP and how it is to work there. maybe not, but you do have an idea on how this company comes across. So it's really important if it comes to showcasing who you are. The practical examples is, for me, I would start with what you're already doing. It's not like we're doing recruitment and we're doing branding. No, recruitment, how are your job descriptions built up? How do you do advertising? How do you invite candidates? How is the invite look? Is it super formal? We expect you here tomorrow at 8 a.m. and you're on audition with us, or super awesome, we get to meet each other tomorrow, right? How do you talk to your candidates? What experience do you deliver? So a practical way to do it, don't overthink it and make it overcomplicated. Look at what you do and how you do it. And is this the way that you want to communicate? I always ask my team, what do we want to be known for? And on anything we do, even if we make an offer, a contract, or build an employer brand, what do we want to be known for as an organization? That's the question I start with, and then the practical examples start with what you have. That's because that's true. That's who you are. The rest is marketing and enhances the message, but start with yourself, I'd say.
That's fantastic. Great. How about you, Kimberly? Any additional thoughts of the virtual coffee? That's really cool. Any other things that that you guys are doing?
Yeah. You know, I think that we've tried a lot of things. I'm super impressed with all the kind of areas that we've explored. I like this idea that Tony just brought up about kind of language that you use across the board. And I think about that a lot when we craft our boilerplate for job descriptions and, you know, when we put out content that has to do with our culture, because I think that it's so hard to capture. We are super fans of each other in the office, right? But how do we show that to the rest of the world without being like, I don't know, over the top about it? So it's definitely something that we're still trying to build out. We're still working on building a strategy for it. You know, but I think that this idea that everybody in the company is a brand ambassador is something that we are all really seeing right now as we are remote, because the interactions that we make are more brief. You know, these face-to-face interactions in particular almost never happen. So, you know, we bring this brand recognition with us in every single meeting. And I think now we are just really trying to make sure that we're doing ourselves justice. So we're still figuring out how we showcase this to the rest of the world. I'm going to be honest, it's a new strategy for myself, and I'm excited to be tackling it, but it's hard. It's hard. I think we've had a much more heavy focus on building our culture together internally than we have had a chance to build it out externally. So that's really our next step, is being able to do that for the rest of the world. Yeah, so that's I got
Yeah, well, hopefully we could do another session like this maybe in a couple months and just kind of follow, maybe as a follow-up, right? That would be really cool. Where we are. So, fantastic. So Yulia, there you go. Yulia, I'd love to give you a chance here too.
Yeah, so I think one of the important aspects of this is exactly how we show this culture to our candidates when they choose us or another place of work, because one of my favorite assessment stages has always been a test day. So when a candidate comes to our office and spends the day with us, doing some real work, going to lunch with the team, getting to know each other. So that was one of the final stages, and it was amazing, really. So my big struggle was how to replicate it in an online environment. And actually, I think we managed to do it. We are doing now kind of online test days with lunch and everything. So you have to come with a meal and actually eat, otherwise other people feel uncomfortable, you know. And it's pretty funny, but of course, you know, something is lost, I should say. But yeah, still, I think that's better than not at least trying to show what our culture and our team is to the candidates. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. Great. So just a quick time check. We just have a few minutes remaining. Let's see if there's any questions left here. So there's one more question. So this will be kind of the final question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. So the question is, in the current environment, how to attract a potential candidate to apply to the position in your company if you aren't a leader in the industry? That's interesting. Let's see, I'll leave it up to you guys. Who would like to take that one?
I can start. Yeah. Well, in my opinion, not everyone actually wants to work for the leader per se. A lot of people actually want to work for startups because they feel more power and more involvement into the product. So I really think now the brand is not that important. It's more interesting what is the project, what is the mission of the company, what they are doing actually, and whether recruiters and talent acquisition leaders can actually promote that in all the marketing and talking actually to candidates. So the culture is more important than a brand, I believe. And of course, the people. So I think the best thing is even when we write job descriptions, to add actual links to the people who would be the managers or team members. It might be a Facebook or LinkedIn link. And then, you can make hiring managers be a little bit more open if they go to some conferences, if they, post about something, they create a great personal brand that helps with hiring as well. So everyone wants to work with strong people. It doesn't matter if it's small startup sometimes or a big corporation. So yeah, right now, and one more trend, now you can hire people from all over the world. So it doesn't really matter because in our pre-COVID world, the big cities had like a lot of candidates. It was big competition always, but then people in some smaller locations, it wasn't so great sometimes with job opportunities. Right now, everyone is equal. We can apply and get hired anywhere in the world. So that also gives you a lot more chances, even if you're not a leader in the industry. So I think that's positive change.
Yeah, very, very well said. Thank you so much, Yulia. So that just about takes us to time. So I'd love to, again, I thank you guys, but the hour went by really fast. I feel like we could probably extend this if we wanted to. Really great discussion here. I appreciate all of your insights, all of your experience that you brought. Really enjoyed this session. So thank you so much. Thank you. Everyone else later.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.